Hello, I'm Liz Earle. Thank you very much for joining us. And this is Kat.
Hi,
I can't hear you very well.
Oh, sorry, I'm Kat Farmer. Can you hear that? Is that better?
Oh,
there we go.
I think we've been turned on, as it were.
Now we're being beamed up.
Have we been turned on? I'm not sure that I'm turned on. Am I turned on? Oh, marvellous. That's good. Well, I'm very glad to be turned on because, well, it's better than the alternative, isn't it? But I celebrated a birthday last week, which I was actually very shy about because I was 60 last week. And, well, thank you, but I don't feel it. And I said to my family and my team, because they were saying, oh, you must have a big party and whatever, I said, I really don't want to do that. I don't identify as somebody who's 60, to use a kind of a modern expression. And in fact, I produced a magazine and my editor said, you know, we want to do it on the cover. And I said, there's absolutely no way. So we ended up with this, you know, which has got 60 written all over it in balloons and a pink jumpsuit. But it was quite a cathartic experience doing that. And it reminded me of a book that I wrote nearly 10 years ago now, which was The Good Menopause Guide. And I remember when my publisher suggested it, I said at the time, I don't really want to write about that because I don't identify as menopausal. And the word menopause is associated with an older woman being decrepit, being unreliable, you know, just, you know, with no brain and all of that. And I didn't feel like that. And I felt that if I went loud with that word and became the sort of the menopause girl, that would somehow, you know, discredit me or diminish me in the eyes of others. And then my publisher, we agreed that I would do it, but they said, but you can't put the word menopause on the cover. I said, well, that's what I'm writing about. And they said, no woman is going to walk into a shop and actively pick up a book that's got menopause on the cover. And I thought, well, that's strange. I said, what do you want to call it then? They said, well, we thought we'd call it aging well, or sort of older beauty. And I thought, well, that's a bit shit. Sorry, that's a bit rubbish. You know, I've always believed in putting on the tin what it is inside. So it was The Good Menopause Guide, and it went to #1 on Amazon the day it was published, which was kind of a big tick in the box and a big sort of, you know, we'll show you to the publishing world. And now, of course, you say the word menopause, and for me, talking about menopause is just like talking about pregnancy or any other time of hormonal change. It's become really normal. I have absolutely no issue with talking about being perimenopausal, menopausal, postmenopausal, or whatever. So I'm hoping that I'm going to feel the same way about the 60-plus word as I do about menopause.
Well, we were talking backstage, weren't we? We were actually saying that interesting. I was 50 in January, and again, it's one of those things. I love telling people I'm 50. I really, really, really like it because I genuinely think that 50, 60, 70, the women that we are today are with generations that have never, ever existed before. We're not our parents, we're not our grandparents, and I really feel that there is a narrative and there is a new story that we all should be telling for ourselves, but also for our children and our grandchildren, for the next generations. I think historically we've always been written off as generations.
Yeah.
And I think suddenly, women are saying, actually, do you know what? Like you say, you don't feel 60. I don't feel 50. I still feel 28. And I do that thing where I walk into a room and think, gosh, is everyone in here really old? And they're all the same age as me. I have almost like age dysmorphosis. I always think, gosh, all these people, look at me. I'm so much younger. Nope, exactly the same age.
Yeah.
But I don't feel that age at all.
Well, you certainly don't look it. And I think there are ways that we can age well. And for me, I've actually just started a little bit of a campaign, which is about having a better second half. Because I think particularly for women, midlife women, often the first half has been a bit rocky. And we may have been the main caregiver, had our children. We may be the caregivers for older parents. We may have, you know, really put everything into work and looking after colleagues in our communities, and kind of we tend to get a bit lost as women, I think, in the middle. And then you reach midlife, and then your hormones conspire against you.
Yes.
You begin to feel really bad, and your body starts to fall apart, and society says, oh, well, you're not worth anything anymore. You know, you don't look young, you don't look as fashionable and as upbeat and as with it. And we tend to get sidelined, and the healthcare system, unfortunately, is skewed against women. There's a massive gender bias when it comes to research in women's health. You know, the average diagnosis for something like endometriosis, for example, is 7 visits to the doctor before it's diagnosed. And it can take up to 10 years for a woman to actually get a proper appointment. I mean, it's really shocking, the lack of medical care that goes on for midlife women. So, you know, my real campaign is to empower and encourage and inspire midlife women that actually this should be the best half. We've given so many of our years to others, I think, getting to midlife. Now it's our turn.
And I think it's really interesting that, as you said earlier, you know, sort of 10 years ago, menopause was very, very much, you know, a whispered word. Whereas now, you know, I mean, thanks to the campaigning of everybody, it is a word, you know, it's very much a buzzword. My fear, interestingly, is that we will be known as the menopause generation. And, you know, there's more than that. And I'm asked constantly, you know, to talk about it. And I'll talk about my experience very, very briefly. But I don't want to be a meno warrior. We can't all do it. There are people out there, you know, that they've got their placards.
Great medics and
yeah, absolutely. And there are women, there are celebrities who have really championed the cause and, you know, have made it so much easier for us to have that knowledge. But I genuinely feel that once you've got it sorted, I don't want to talk about it.
No, you can
it's a
move
bit
on.
like when you're 13 and you have your first period. I'm not still talking about it when I'm 15. I'm done. You know, I've sorted it and I'm done. And I think it's the same. And I think what people don't talk about, though, are the advantages and how incredible you can feel when you get it right. And that's whatever you choose to do, be it HRT, be it something else. Once you actually get that right, mentally and physically, you can feel incredible. And it's then, what can you do with that?
Completely. I mean, I'm very much into biohacking. I don't know whether anybody here is following any of the biohackers. And this is a term, there was a guy in America called Dave Asprey, who's kind of the godfather of biohacking. And he was a Silicon Valley exec. He's definitely neurodiverse. He's got an extraordinary brain. And he was hacking computer codes. But he got very sick. He was very overweight. And I think with his kind of spectrum disorders, life was not looking great for him. And he decided that instead of hacking computers, he would hack the human body and work out,
as you do,
little ways to make life better. So, you know, he tried all sorts of things. He was a vegan, and then he was weight training and all of this, and nothing really worked. In fact, he got seriously unwell as a vegan. So he decided that he would do different explorations into different things. One of the things that he created, actually, was, you may have heard of bulletproof coffee. That was Dave Asprey's invention. No. That was when you put MCT oil or butter in coffee and you whiz it up, black coffee with fat, first thing in the morning, which makes your brain run on ketones and fat as energy rather than sugar and glucose.
Wow.
So it doesn't spike your blood sugar. It gives you a bit of buzz, because caffeine is actually neuroprotective, it's heart protective. We should all be drinking more coffee, but only in the morning, because otherwise it's going to start disrupting your circadian rhythm later in the day. So he was a big advocate of early morning coffee, not with milk or sugar or anything, but with these healthy fats.
It does sound disgusting.
It tastes delicious.
Does it?
Kat, you have to trust me on
fine.
this.
Okay, I'm going to try it.
Anybody drink MCT oil with coffee? Is anybody? Yes. We have an early adopter in the audience. I highly recommend it. I mean, I do it. You'll always see me on my Instagram.
Right, I want it.
Usually with MCT oil. MCT stands for medium chain triglycerides, and you'll find this. This is, you learnt it here first, okay, but it's going to be everywhere. So if you want to buy shares in a company, choose one making MCT oil.
Right, done.
And the other thing that I put in my coffee in the morning is creatine. And creatine is a natural component of our protein, which we lose as we age, particularly women. All midlife women over the age of 40 should be putting creatine in their tea or coffee.
Wow.
It's part of the ATP energy cycle. In fact, I was with a doctor this morning at Chelsea Flower Show promoting the menopause charity Rose, and she's one of the trustees on the charity, and we fell into conversation about creatine. Then she said, oh, did you know that once you're menopausal, it's really important to top up your creatine, because it's it's estrogen dependent. So many of the nutrients that we have in our lives are dependent on estrogen, which is why as women we so often fall apart when we lose our estrogen. So these little tiny hacks, and sorry, getting back to biohacking, what I love about biohacking is these little things like adding a teaspoon of creatine to your coffee, having a 60-second cold shower in the morning. It's another fantastic biohack. Yes, do you do that? Creatine is a molecule in itself. It is just a nutrient.
Is it a protein?
It comes from protein, yes.
Where can you buy that? I mean,
any health food shop. So creatine actually had a bit of a bad rep because it's used by bodybuilders, and they'll talk about loading creatine. And if you go onto any of these sort of bulking up websites, then you'll see they'll talk about creatine loading, and they're taking, I don't know, 20 grams of creatine 3 times a day, whereas what we need is 5 grams, like a teaspoonful, daily, men and women. Look it up. And there's serious studies on PubMed, which is the kind of the main site for all the proper peer-reviewed medical journals, PubMed. If you just type in creatine, muscle mass. Black coffee and creatine.
Was it anchor butter or something? What was the butter?
Not anchor
Well,
butter.
no. Well, you could use anchor butter. Actually, I prefer Kerrygold.
It's right for the men as well.
Yeah, so any. So look up bulletproof coffee. Lots of recipes online for bulletproof coffee. You can use coconut oil that contains medium chain triglycerides, or you can buy MCT oil, or you can use butter. I mean, I don't really like butter in coffee. It tastes a bit weird.
That's what I meant. I was a bit.
Whereas MCT oil doesn't really taste of anything, so it just
Brilliant.
tastes nicely of black coffee.
Okay,
So what are your hacks?
My hacks, do you know what? My hacks for North, I think the easiest hack that I find is that every day you should wake up and you should look in the mirror and you should love seeing the person you see looking back at you. And I think that is something that is so easily lost as women. As you said earlier, we spend our entire younger lives, or our midlife, shall we say, pre this age, looking after children, looking after husbands, going to work. We are, on the PTA, we are helping everybody. And somewhere along the lines, we get lost. And I don't know any woman who has not at one point in her life looked in the mirror and thought, I don't like that person I see looking back at me. Or I've got a wardrobe full of clothes and I have nothing to wear. And I think actually, when I'm always asked, I mean, I'm a stylist, and the one thing I'm asked all the time is, what is the one thing you would actually invest in? Is it a bag? Is it a leather jacket? And I say, no. It's your time. Honestly, it is your time. And that is, it's a bit like I say, when you learn to cook, or when you're cooking a recipe, you put some time in it, you put some effort into it. You do some research, you go to the supermarket, you might try it out beforehand if you're cooking it for friends. When it comes to putting an outfit on and looking spectacular, we all expect to be able to just reach into the wardrobe, go do, and we look amazing. When 99% of the time we look like a potato. And that's because you haven't given it any thought.
True.
And actually, I think it's one of those things that women deserve to spend more time than you ever thought possible. It doesn't have to be days and days and days, but it's finding those things in your wardrobe that you absolutely love. And I think the older we get, I've worked with so many women over the years, the trickier it gets, because suddenly they're confronted with what they consider to be rules. Over a certain age, you can't wear that. Well, that is just rubbish. And suddenly what women also do is they suddenly are very, very aware of everybody else's opinion. So, they'll listen to their partner, or they'll listen to their, God forbid, you listen to a teenage daughter. I mean, that is
that's awful.
Worst
They look you up and down.
Person.
You go, really?
And then before you know it, they've got that jumper on.
Yes.
So yeah.
And it looks way better on them.
No, it doesn't
annoying.
look way better on them. No. So I think, I wrote a whole book about it called Get Change. It was finding the new you through fashion. Because it can be a lot, it's a cathartic process as well.
Yeah.
It's giving you back your confidence.
But you're right, when do we actually, as women, actually go into our wardrobes and have the time to pretty much try everything on?
Yes.
And weed out. I did it recently with my trousers. My trousers were like spawning in my wardrobe. I had so many and I would only wear the first 2 pairs, and then they were Una's. So I spent a whole Saturday afternoon, put them all on, not together, obviously. Put them all on. Half of them, had to go to the charity shop because they didn't fit, or they just looked absolutely awful.
The hem was down, or
Some of them, a couple of them had to be taken in, actually, at the waist, which was rather good. And then, and I found some new favourites, and I kind of repurposed them. And I also follow Amanda Wakely online. She's got a great Instagram, and she's been putting these braid stripes down her trousers, just a pair of black trousers, and going to somewhere like Vivi Rouleau in Marylebone Lane, and just stitching something down the side. Totally transforms a look.
Absolutely.
Or a bit of marabou around the hem. Turn them into evening fun trousers,
I think the thing I would say as well is, one of the things I talk about in the book is finding your style. And as you get older, I think it's something that, you can you have your style that you know and that you love, which is brilliant, but I think you can always adapt that. So I think one of the reasons as well why people always say I don't look 50 is because I don't dress like a 50-year-old, in inverted commas. But what does a 50-year-old dress like? Again, we have these preconceptions, we have these connotations, and they're no longer valid. They are no longer valid.
And we don't have the role models, do we, necessarily? Because, health-wise, women actually haven't been living as long as they have for as long as we are now. It wasn't that long ago when the average age of a woman, the life expectancy, was 60. Now it's 84, and it's rising. So, hormonally, it's really important to get our hormones right, because we're going to have many, many more years, hopefully, without our periods than with them. Yeah. So that's a real thing.
What a lovely thought.
I know, freedom,
Isn't that
liberation, low cost, low hassle, low faff. Let's embrace the positives. But I was looking the other day, I think it might have been the Sunday Times, and there were pictures of Jane Seymour. Did you see her?
Yes.
77. Hello, what a babe. She looks absolutely phenomenal. Jane Fonda, 84.
You see Martha Stewart?
Martha Stewart, in the hairdressers. Yeah. Oh my gosh. And obviously there's a bit of work and whatever, but looking great, feeling great, and having a good time by the looks of things. I'm sure their life is not Instagram perfect, because it never is. But on the whole, doing really well and being the women that we can look up to, in our 50s and 60s as older role models.
And I think it is throwing out that rule book. Over the years, I've been asked by various publications, normally the Daily Mail, to ask about, what can't women wear after a certain age? And I say nothing. And I always say the only thing that a woman shouldn't wear after a certain age is the weight of someone else's opinion.
Oh, I like that.
And
That's a good one.
It's so true. And I think it's really, we talk about, sort of age inappropriate clothing, the old mutton dressed as lamb scenario.
Yeah, it's hideous, isn't it, that expression?
It's absolutely awful. And my point is, there is no such thing as age inappropriate clothing. It's occasion inappropriate.
Okay.
And that's relative or relevant, whether you are 25 or 65.
Yeah.
A pair of leather hot pants, absolutely, you can wear them if you so desire to at 65, absolutely, maybe wear them with tights. Would you wear them to a funeral? Absolutely not. Would a 25-year-old wear them to a funeral?
No.
I would hope not. Would you wear them to a board meeting? Probably not. And that works. And I think if you think about these things, it works. Sort of a bustier. Yes, everyone can wear a bustier, but where would you wear it? So it's occasion appropriate and not age appropriate.
So where did your look come from? Because you've got a very distinctive look. I love the hat. I love that that's sort of all part of you. Have you grown into that, or did you always have it?
I always did love a hat. I've grown into the hat. I think the thing I do in the book actually is I talk about finding style icons, because it's very, very difficult to suddenly pinpoint your style. It's a little bit like going shopping when you're hungry. You sort of need to narrow down, well, what do I want? And it's exactly the same with style. And I think when you say to somebody, to find your style, I always find it by thinking about an icon. So I divide them down into sort of 8, I think there's 9 actually different, and they're everything from minimalist elegant, who are like Victoria Beckham, Audrey Hepburn. You then have there's 70s chic. So there are lots and lots and lots of different ones that go all the way through. And I think it's a question of sort of finding, you don't want to necessarily be or emulate that person, but it's their look that you actually love. Yeah, and what that does is it stops making you those mistakes.
Yeah, but I think the great thing about aging and style is that we know pretty much what suits us.
Yeah.
You know, I know that a longer skirt suits me. You know, I don't like my legs, but I have a waist. So, you know, that's what I go for. I like things cut on the bias, things that are flowing. I like things that cover my arms. Actually, we were just having a chit-chat, because this dress is from Lexi London. I don't know if you know her, but it's a brilliant London-based brand, and she does lots of these sustainable fashions that are sort of great for the Hurlingham Club, you know, great for all the summer parties coming up. I'm not sponsored by her, by the way, I'm just saying it.
Perfect for holidays as well.
Perfect for holidays. But I was going to Chelsea Flower Show this morning, but I knew it would be cold. So I just hopped online, sadly, to Amazon, and I bought these sleeves. So this is it's a pair of sleeves, and you literally just type in sleeves, and all these sort of different brands come up. And they stop here. So it's not like a top, it's literally a pair of sleeves, and you can get them in all colours. And they're warm, but also they're quite forgiving. So if you're somebody who wants to wear something that is sleeveless, and there are so many amazingly pretty sleeveless dresses, but you think, actually, I'm not confident enough to wear that, you can just pop a pair of sleeves on underneath.
It's much easier than doing 85,000 sit-ups or press-ups, isn't it?
Well, I do those as well.
Yeah.
Actually, you talk about push-ups. Push-ups are the best, okay? If you want to do 2 exercises, and again, this comes back to the biohacking, the 2 exercises that all the trainers I've ever interviewed have talked about to say that we must do, particularly as we age. The first is squats. So that action of squatting, you're actually engaging every muscle in your body. And when you engage the big muscle groups, like the glutes, what we're also doing is we're stimulating the production of growth factor. So that's a hormone that we lose as we age. And of course, given the name growth, you can tell it's all to do with cell renewal. So at the end of your bed, in your pajamas, you don't need any gym equipment, there's no trainers needed, no excuses. Anybody can do this. And you can start with just 10 and then, you know, work up. I try and do 100, and if you want, you can hold weights, weighted squats. Really key, seriously, start doing those. And I interviewed Dr. Michael Mosley, you know, probably even know the Radio 4 doctor. And he was saying that he does them every morning in his bedroom. And he said that there's been a study that shows that the down-up action, so that physical movement, has been shown to be neuroprotective against dementia and Alzheimer's. Who knew that? That's really interesting. So that's one thing. And then the other one are the push-ups. So again, it's resistance training. So it's using your own body weight for resistance, improves muscle mass. I mean, it gives you shape and tone, but it's also about maintaining muscle mass. And as women, once we age past the age of 30, we're losing 1% of our muscle mass on average a year. So, you know, if I hadn't been going to the gym between the ages of 30 and 60, I would have lost 1/3 of my muscle mass. And then by the age of, 90 or 120, which is what I'm pitching for, that would be significantly less. And that's when we start to lose our mobility and we lose stability and balance and all those things. So these little micro hacks, micro bits of exercise snacking. Stand on one leg while you brush your teeth.
For balance.
It's for balance. Balance is another key thing for aging.
But this is so interesting. I mean, I hit 50 and suddenly, you get flooded with requests from, from nutritionists and from, gym people saying, you should be doing this, you should be doing that, you should be doing the rest. And as someone who, I've got some friends in the audience, and the photographer's going to be laughing now. As someone who is not the most familiar with any form of exercise or anything like that, I was a bit, oh, you're kidding me. This sounds like an absolute fun sponge being 50. And so actually, and it does seem really overwhelming. Sort of hit the menopause, they're like, great, here's HRT. Oh, and by the way,
you need to run a marathon.
Every single piece of joy you've ever had in your life, you can't have any more if you want to live to be 75. And I just thought, oh my God.
No.
So this biohacking is brilliant.
Biohacking is great because it's little nuggets. So a few squats, a few push-ups. Yes, I do run, but not very fast. Really, very rarely more than a 3K. And in fact, if you're ever tempted or have any midlife friends tempted to go and run a marathon or a half marathon, please stop them. Because actually, no, seriously.
Okay.
Over 5K and you can start to trigger the immune response, which makes it counterproductive, not to mention the risk of injury and all the rest. So it's not something that we should be doing. You can do a little bit, and actually things like sprinting, so you walk for 100 yards, You run fast for 100 yards, you walk for another 100 yards, and then you sprint for 100 yards. That stimulates your metabolism, and it just gets your stamina and your agility and all of that going without wearing you out.
And actually long running as well is absolutely awful for your face as well.
Not good for your face.
Awful,
Not a good
awful,
look.
awful for your face.
I do actually have a friend who is patenting like a kind of a face strap that it kind of like holds like a chin strap, like a Coldstream Guards, like this, and it kind of goes all around your face. I said, that's mad. Nobody's ever going to go out and wear one of those running, and you don't need to run that fast anyway. So
in your own gym. No, my esthetician always says she knows when I've been running because she comes and she's like,
she can see your face.
Yeah, she can see because you lose the fat of your face. That's the first place it goes when you run. Yeah, it's runner's face, I think it's called.
I remember interviewing Carolina Herrera in New York years and years ago, and she back then I think was probably just about 50. I think she's about 80 or so now. And she said to me, and she's quite curvy, quite petite, and she said, she's very much against all these sort of New Yorker, very, very thin society women. And she said, darling, at some age you have to choose between your face or your backside. She said, I choose my face. Because if you lose too much weight from your body and too much of the fat, you can look really gaunt and drained. So I think I choose my face any day. More people are going to see it, put it that way.
This is very true, isn't it? I think the thing that I find so interesting is the fact that there is so much information out there. I think we're being bombarded with it, women. And my concern as we get older is the fact that, there is almost too much information now. And I think what people need to do is actually, as you say, really cherry pick, like you say, face or bum. Okay, well, what of this am I going to be able to live with? What of this is actually going to make my life? How, if we want to dot every I and cross every T, you could be the most healthy version of yourself, but at what cost to your happiness? And I think there are these small hacks that you can have that actually can make a massive, massive difference. And I also think it's down to ownership as well. What one person does isn't necessarily what's going to work for another person.
Sure. I think we're seeing that with personalised medicine and, DNA testing and nutrigenomics and all of that kind of thing. And it's why certain diets will work for some people and they won't work for others.
Yes.
A lot depends on ethnicity and genetic predisposition and gene variances and, all the other things. But I believe in two things, really. One is the 80-20 rule.
Yeah.
So I'll be pretty good for 80% of the time. 20% is kind of treats or naughtiness. And I also believe in adding in more of the good stuff. I'm not very good at taking stuff away, but adding in, having a little glass of kefir every morning. Does anybody drink kefir? Yeah, great. Kefir is probably the thing. If you don't put your hand up, you don't.
No, I
drink
haven't.
kefir.
I do kombucha.
Oh, that's good.
Is that okay?
But it's different.
Is it different? I thought it was the 3 Ks, isn't it?
Yeah, so kombucha and kefir, they both are probiotic. Kombucha tends to be more the different strains, the bifidus type of bacteria, whereas kefir is dairy, so that's more the lactobacillus family. So you need both. So you need kombucha and kefir. So kefir, if anybody doesn't know, is like a supercharged yogurt. And it's a thin drink, and you can find it in most supermarkets now. It originally came from the Caucasus.
It's like, do you remember Yop?
I do remember Yop and Yoplait and it's like Yakult and all of that, except that's full of sugar. And you can make it yourself. It's actually sugar-free because the microbes digest all the lactose, turn it into beneficial gut bugs. But we know so much more about the gut-brain axis now in helping with mental health and helping not only with gut health and reflux and digestion and all of that and bloating, etc., but so many, 80% of our immune system is housed in our gut. So if we want to be strong from an immune system point of view, we need to look after our gut bugs as well. So just drink kefir. It's such a simple tip, and you can thank me later.
Before or after our coffee?
I would probably drink it after, because I tend to do intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
So I don't tend to eat anything, including kefir, because anything means anything with carbohydrate or protein or sugar. Until about 11 or 12 o'clock
in the day.
I have coffee because black coffee with MCT oil and creatine does not break a fast.
I'm loving this.
So you can have that, and it keeps you going. The MCT oil makes you run on ketones, and it means that you can actually go for longer without eating. So we know that intermittent fasting can be really helpful. So I try and go at least a sort of 12 to 14 hour window between my last bite at night, and that's last mouthful of anything. So that's last sip of hot chocolate, glass of wine, really nothing. It's just like herb tea or water. So I try not to have anything after about 9 o'clock, which means that if I'm going to do 14 hours, I wouldn't have my first mouthful of anything other than black coffee until about 11.
Yeah.
Do you do that? Do you
I've done it for
intermittent
years.
fast?
Absolutely, yes.
And
but
what's
by
your
accident.
time zone?
Mine is, you see, I would like to have this organised. I am one of these awful people. The awful person that forgets to eat. I know.
We just
I
hate
know.
you,
I know.
Sorry.
So I do it I've always done it sort of by accident rather than by default. I can't eat breakfast because it actually makes me feel sick. And so I just tend to just not eat, and I work, and then sort of middays, more 1 or 2 actually.
Yeah.
But I will eat later.
Yeah.
So I will eat later. And it's just, I've always done it. And I remember years and years and years ago going to see a nutritionalist and it was a PT. And I went with my then husband, and he was, being all the whole, she does this rubbish thing about she won't eat, she doesn't eat thing. And he said, no, that's how it should be.
That's really good.
I was like, yes.
When you think about it, we don't need breakfast. But if you've had a nice big supper and then literally just crashed into bed, you've not been expending very much energy, and your gut needs that gap. And there are gut microbes. There's a species called Akkermansia in the gut, and it's been shown to be in higher levels of people who are naturally quite slender. And it needs space. In order for Akkermansia to thrive, it needs space, and it needs that gap, that rested gut.
Yeah.
So in order to encourage more of your Akkermansia bugs, you need to have that gap. And it's such a simple hack, isn't it? It's basically do nothing for a few hours and let your gut bugs work for you in terms of keeping you trim, or keeping you a healthy weight anyway.
I think there are people, I know, whenever I used to say it to people say, I can't survive without breakfast. I said, well, you almost have to train your body to do it.
I remember when I first stopped, I would panic. I'd get up in the morning and think, I must eat something. But actually, you just tell your brain, actually, you're fine. You're not going to starve. At 10:30, I promise you can have a boiled egg. And it's like, okay.
Well, I do think as well, I remember years ago saying to somebody, she said, I'm hungry. I said, but you can be hungry. You don't have to
fine
feed
to be
yourself.
hungry.
You're not a toddler.
That's a really,
But actually,
I'm hungry. Yeah, sure. I'm tired. It's like fine. We can deal with it, can't we?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I think it is. I think as a society, we're very unused to living with being hungry.
Yeah.
And it's not starving.
No,
it's just
you're not
a little
ravenous.
bit peckish. No.
But also, a lot of hunger is actually dehydration.
Yes.
So the first thing is, if you feel hungry, is have a glass of water.
Absolutely.
And then see how you feel.
Yeah. Or boredom. As well. Do something. Go for a walk.
Yeah, or sad,
distraction.
comfort eating, actually.
Oh, I'm the opposite
Or
from that.
stressed.
No, I'm total opposite.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh no, for me it's the downfall. If I'm having a bad day, that's when I reach for snacks. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I tend to reach and go shopping. That's a terrible thing.
Should we take questions? Do you
Yes.
think? How are we doing for time? Are
We
we okay? Is it?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. Is anybody? Yes, lady in the green.
We are all so different, each of us.
Yeah.
We can't all need the same thing.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. We are very different, and I think personalised medicine is really proving that. But I think there are some fundamentals that run across the whole human species. So for example, we know that getting out early in the day, no matter who you are, is going to help your circadian rhythm. Getting out, looking up, seeing sunlight, not through a glass, not through your glasses or sunglasses or contact lenses, but literally letting those early morning UV light, the infrared light, penetrate the retinal cells of the eyes. That helps us sleep better, because it actually resets your circadian clock. If you can do that first thing in the morning, it's also very good for processing vitamin D and synthesizing other hormones. So there are some fundamentals that are common to all of us.
And I would say as well, nobody ever looked in the mirror. No one ever said, I don't want to feel better about myself.
Yeah.
I would say that's a universal thing. Once you feel better about yourself, your confidence levels go through the roof. And that is universal across the board, be it man, woman, or child.
And it's actually
Definitely.
talking kindly to yourself as well. I think, the words are powerful. I think the words that we say to other people are powerful. We can always remember a cutting word that somebody said that was unkind and how that made us feel, but we say it to ourselves. And actually, we need to speak more kindly to ourselves. You know, I will beat myself up and say stuff to myself inwardly about, oh, that was really stupid, or that was a real fail. I'd never say that to my best friend. You know, I'd be saying, oh, come on, it was fine. Nobody noticed, actually. You did the best. You know, it'll be fine next time. So why don't we treat ourselves in that same way? And actually speaking them out loud, rather than just internalising. You can actually look at that mirror,
Yes.
like you say, and actually say those words.
Yes.
You know, say, actually, you're doing the best you can. I know it's a tough time, and I know you feel not so great, but actually, you know, your hair's not looking too bad, and, you know, put your stomach in, you'll be fine.
I do think we all forget that we really, truly do deserve to be the best versions of ourselves we can be. And I know that sounds really trite, but actually, if you think about it, you do deserve that.
We want it for our kids, don't we? You know, we put a lot of time and effort and energy and encourage them and supporting them and enabling them.
Yeah.
And actually, maybe we should spend a little bit of time thinking, well, how can I support myself better? What would make me feel better so that I can then be better able to help others?
Yes.
You know, it's like they say on the plane, you know, put on your mask before helping
first,
others.
yeah.
You know, you've got to sort yourself out before you can then be a better assistance to others.
And a role model. I think that's the other thing.
Yeah.
I think it's one thing, you know, sort of happy people breed happy people, not literally, but yes, literally. But also, I think as a role model, you know, our daughters and our sons,
Yeah.
you know, basically really deserve to see you as a happy mother, because then that will reflect them in a happy wife. You know, let's you know, break the cycle.
There was a lady here. Did you have a question? Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on HRT?
Yes, massively pro. I think it should be, considered by everybody. I mean, I can talk for hours about HRT. There's just a couple of resources, actually, if anybody wants to look them up. There's a very good app. It's a free app called the Balance Menopause app. And that has a symptom tracker, and it has lots and lots of advice and studies and resources, ways to talk to your doctor, etc. And the Menopause Charity, which I was actually their first ambassador. It's a really brilliant organisation. So I think HRT is hugely health protective for women. Estrogen is the fuel that we run on, and we run out of it at our peril. And the increasing number of studies looking at how health protective it is. For example, if you replace your estrogen as a woman, you're 50% less likely to suffer a cardiac event or a stroke. 50%. It protects against 30% of bowel cancers. It protects against type 2 diabetes. The interesting studies now on brain health, dementia, Alzheimer's. There's a study recently published, I think it might have been in the BMJ, looking at MRI imaging of women on HRT brain scans and showing changes in the brains between those who have replaced estrogen and those who haven't. And of course, Alzheimer's is a growing concern, particularly for older women. And women are far more likely to get it than men. And we have to think, well, why? What's different between men and women? The main difference is the hormone load that we run on. Of course, mostly of that is estrogen. So, yeah, very safe, very effective.
I can honestly say it's changed my life. Totally and utterly changed my life.
I wish I'd taken it sooner.
Yeah.
You know, I went through my 40s thinking that my low mood and lack of sleep, etc., was because I was busy and stressed.
Yep.
And if only somebody had taken me aside then, and it was too late for me back then. But that's, I think, why I'm so passionate about it now, is that I don't want other women to miss out, because studies show that the sooner you start taking it, the better, the more health protective it is.
But if you hadn't taken it for 20 years, can you then take it?
You can. So my mother, and she's been public with this, so she won't mind me sharing at all. She was on HRT for many, many, many years, and then when she got to, I think, sort of nearly 70, her GP said, "Oh, you don't need this anymore. You know, don't worry about it," because I mean, unfortunately, he didn't know, and her health suffered as a result, and she went back onto it at the age of 80. It was actually on her 80th birthday I managed to get her a prescription. She's now 84 and she's thriving, and she says, "Oh, darling, it's marvellous. I don't have to get up for a wee in the night anymore. It's so," you know, and she's just doing really, really well. And I think the more studies that come up, particularly looking at brain health, and of course the studies haven't been done, and nobody's really bothered to invest in studying the impact of estrogen for older women. Why? Because it's women. Who cares? And because it's older women, we care even less. And there's not really any money in HRT. You know, hormones are really cheap. You look at all the Alzheimer drugs and the rheumatoid arthritis drugs and the heart disease drugs, the cancer drugs, they're seriously expensive. You know, the pharma is rocking on the proceeds of that. If all the women were on estrogen, probably wouldn't need half of those. So the incentive is not there. I mean, I kid you not, the incentive is not there to fund the studies, but it's beginning to happen. It's beginning to happen.
The estrogen without the progesterone.
You need progesterone. If you've got a uterus, you need a progesterone. The role of progesterone is simply to protect the uterine lining in the womb from the build-up that it gets during the month, during the menstrual cycle. So if you haven't got a uterus, if you've had a hysterectomy, you don't need progesterone. But they give you estrogen and progesterone, which is really important if you do have a uterus. And then the third hormone, I don't know whether you take this, is testosterone.
Not yet.
I'm on testosterone. I mean, I tell you, it's woof, it's great. And it's not just for libido either. I should just put that out there. It's for brain health. And I interviewed an American psychiatrist, professor of psychiatry, very interesting studies looking at the role of testosterone and female brain health. And before we go any further, testosterone is a female hormone. We make more testosterone in our ovaries as women than we do estrogen.
Wow.
Everyone thinks testosterone, it's for men, it's bodybuilders, but no, it's fundamental for women. Again, the research hasn't been there, so doctors will say, yes, but I haven't seen the evidence, I haven't seen the randomized controlled trials. They say, no, that's because there haven't been any. But that doesn't mean it doesn't work. Say again? I wish you could. Well, it's on prescription only, so if you want testosterone, at the moment it's a postcode lottery, because some CGCs will license it for GPs and some won't. So it really depends. There's a lot online about it. Go onto Liz Earle Wellbeing website. There's a whole mass of information on testosterone. You can get it privately. There's a private prescription. It's called Androfem, and it's licensed for women. It's made in Western Australia. It's shipped over here. It's quite expensive, but you can get it. Or what some of my friends do, and I'm not recommending this, okay, this is not advice, but just as an FYI, they go online and they use a male email address and they go onto an online pharmacy where you fill out a form for the man and you can get it cheaply and easily because it's available for men, of course. So anyway, but that's not a recommendation, I'm just saying what some of my friends do.
And if somebody might do that,
Yes.
what kind of grams do you need?
A pea-sized amount rubbed into your thigh every night.
There we go.
But again, there's lots of information online about using it. It's Testim gel, which is the men's. I mean, men will use handfuls of it because men do get a male menopause. It's not really. There's very, very few symptoms really. The two main symptoms for men losing testosterone, which does happen during midlife, the first is middle age spread. So the fat disposition changes. So you tend to get kind of round around the middle, and depression. Lethargy and depression. And, you know, all guys really over the age of 50 should be having a testosterone blood test because it does affect a significant number of guys and it's super easy just to put your hormones back. And a lot of people are worried about these hormones. You know, they think, oh, I can't have estrogen, it's dangerous. But you know, we have it anyway. Why would your estrogen suddenly turn against you when you've had, you know, we have 90 times more estrogen in our body when we're pregnant than at any other time of life because it's so health-giving and it's so necessary and so protective. And we feel fine about taking thyroxine for thyroid condition or insulin for diabetes. It's just a hormone. It's a naturally occurring body-identical hormone available, regulated on the NHS from your GP. Yes?
Do you have any views on gluten consumption over 50? I asked the question because I have celiac disease.
Yeah, interesting.
I was 60, but I was under one of the top consultants at a guy's hospital at the time, and he just turned around and he said, look, as far as I'm concerned, everybody else, if you just cut down on the wheat, cut down on the gluten, our health would be so much better.
So are you actually celiac?
I have celiac, so I had to. Yeah.
Completely, but that came obviously later in life. You weren't
60.
Genetically.
So
Okay.
I got diagnosed at 60, but when I look back, I can see all the, all the flags.
So gluten sensitivity or celiac disease tends to come from a leaky gut, from issues in the microbiome. And I have a book actually called The Good Gut Guide where we cover this. And you know, I'm very much in favour of trying to address why you're celiac and why you are gluten intolerant. And it stems from having
My daughter's celiac.
Okay, and was
She
she
was
born
diagnosed
with
when she was
celiac?
nope. She was diagnosed when she was 5, and I've done quite a lot of research on it. And I've learned that it's an autoimmune disease.
Yes.
And it's triggered by a viral. So everybody is born with the antibodies, but they're only triggered by a virus. So she had swine flu, and a very good friend of mine, his daughter has it, and she had glandular fever. And people who have had COVID, quite a lot of them is now. So it is triggered.
And does she manage it with medication, or
oh no, absolutely not.
Just avoids gluten?
There's no medication for it. It's just such cheap. It's not a very pleasant. It's a blood test. The only way you can do it, and then they will always do a endoscopy as well, because you can get a positive negative on the blood test. So they then do an endoscopy to find out if your villi are alive or dead.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I do know people who've reversed it through changing their gut microbiome. And there are lots of interesting supplements. You might want to look into a supplement called butyrate. B-U-T-Y.
Since I started on the diet that I'm on,
Yeah.
I'm not looked back.
Yeah, it's just
No, it's
gluten.
fine. I mean, I think it's fine, to cut out gluten, but I think ultimately, if you could repair your gut to such an extent that you didn't have to, because obviously gluten-free foods, they're a lot more expensive to buy, they can be hard to avoid. Sometimes you don't know whether gluten's in something.
I mean, she was diagnosed when she was 5, so it's 13 years now. And actually, it's okay. I think what we tend to do is go down the route of just naturally gluten-free foods. So you're looking at potatoes, vegetables. There are certain places in the world. I mean, Indian food's amazing. Chinese food is absolutely terrible, awful. Italian food actually is very good now. Actually, gluten-free pasta is. If you go to Italy, it's absolutely amazing. Spain is actually brilliant for gluten-free, as is France. Avoid the bread, but it's just much easier to go down a naturally, which is obviously a more healthy route. Polenta, nuts, like almond cakes and things. So the only things that she really struggles with are bread, which is disgusting. Sorry, it's not very nice, is it? And it's not improved in 13 years. God forbid you try a croissant as well. I mean, they are like lead. But I mean, so it's just a way of life. And it's hereditary as well, and it's much more common in Irish people. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yes. Yeah. It's because of the potato famine.
Yeah.
You mentioned that there were 2 hormones, but you said there were 3. You only spoke about 2.
Yeah, so basically, in terms of HRT, the ones that you normally start with are estrogen and progesterone, if you still have a uterus or a womb. And then the third one that can get added in later is testosterone.
Oh, which is a progesterone.
Yeah, progesterone. Yeah.
But I would say that the testosterone actually helps your absorption of the estrogen.
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, which a lot of people don't know and
Yeah.
don't understand.
It's so interesting, and so much of this is not yet understood. The majority of women, midlife women who go to a GP complaining of low mood, anxiety, depression, the first thing that they're offered is antidepressants. And there's absolutely no clinical evidence that antidepressants have any effect at all in low mood induced by menopause. So, and even the NICE guidelines for the NHS say that the first course of action should be to look at HRT for menopause-induced low mood, because it's caused by the estrogen receptors in the brain losing estrogen, and the only way that you're going to repair that is to put the estrogen back, not by just numbing you with an antidepressant. So unfortunately, far too many women are fobbed off with antidepressants. But hopefully that will start to change. But we've got a long way to go. Any more questions before we finish? I don't know, how are we doing for time? Are we okay?
I think we're done actually. What's now? It's 25
I
to...
can hear. That's very
There you
good
go.
timing.
We'll wrap it up.
Well, thank you. It's been really great.